Welcome, 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 welcome. Happy Wednesday, everybody. And welcome to Logic Lounge with Fleece and Jones, episode 41. What's up, Shot Nigga? Brought to you, of course, by Block Legend 7. Shouts out to Block ING Records LLC. ING Records, ING. Shouts out to ING. The legendary 41. Man, I ain't got to keep telling y'all how grateful I am and things of that sort. So, I'm grateful. I'm sound like a broken record, but that's cool. I'm steady climbing. We're at 41. We'll be at 54, I know it. At 50, it turned to 100. And I'm just definitely grateful for it. So, for 41, man, for 39, I had a chat with a therapist, which is my niece. Had a beautiful interview, man. But in all honesty, before we even set it up, we definitely said we would do multiple. So I definitely wanted to have another sit down with her. Luckily, she had the time to do it, soon. So today is pretty much a chat with a therapist, part two. I just want to have a conversation with her and honestly, pick her brain more so as a niece and as a therapist because I know there's a lot of people that are skeptical about getting help, especially when dealing with anxiety, depression, things of that sort. I am one of those people. So, I kind of briefly discussed it with my niece to where, she was like, we could just have a conversation. So, that's what I'm going to do, man. That's where the part two is coming from. So, without further ado, man, I'm going to pull her up and we're going to have a part two. One second. She shall be in momentarily. Ooh, got those credentials in the back.
I'm gonna clean my camera. Hold on.
Understood.
Okay, much better.
How are you?
It's been a week.
I could definitely agree with that. I could second and third that it has been, interesting.
To say the
And
least.
yeah, and that's being nice about it. Well, first and foremost, I'm extremely grateful that you came back for part two. Family or not, man, I know your time is absolutely valuable. So I want to extend my thanks for you willing to come and have this conversation with me again. Because actually, I have been thinking, man. I looked at the interview that we did, and this is aside from knowing you personally. Looking at that interview made me do something you mentioned a lot, and that was reflect. Uh, and in the midst of me reflecting, I realized that this is something that even I may need to look into. And I'm real big on you can't tell a person to do something if you're not willing to do it yourself. So, with your permission, of course, I'm kind of coming, you know, more so as a person looking for help because this is something that I do think it's helpful, but like I said, this is something that I've only tried a couple of times, and because of the people, I strayed away from it when the bigger picture is absolutely, dude, you need to help. This is something you can't do alone. So, yeah, I want to use you for that, niece. I do, because this is something that I seriously think is helpful, and I have to show and prove by being willing to share. So, if you don't mind, man, I'd like to pick your brain with a few things that I'm personally dealing with, just to get your input on it, as far as what you would suggest to do, or whatever you're willing to give. You know what I mean? Whatever you're willing to give me, I definitely want to get that from you. Is that something you would mind doing?
Yeah, I will try my best to give you what I got.
Okay, okay. First thing, then, I will say, man, something I realize about myself.
Hmm.
I, I, okay, I'm charismatic, right? The major reason I feel, and I don't know this for sure because I can only say what I feel, one of the reasons I like making people laugh, I like being friendly, uh, taking people away from certain things, is because that's something I feel like I sorely missed coming up. You know what I'm saying? Young teen, adolescents. Um, so with that, my question to you is, I know you're human. In the last interview, you let it be known that one of the things that makes your clients comfortable is the fact that you come as a person. You mentioned your tattoos. You mentioned how, hey, the Katlin you see here is the Katlin you're gonna see if you run into me at a store or something. So how do you deal with holding on to things? Like, I know there's some things that you may have held on to. How do you know, and how do you go about letting them go? I don't know if I'm even asking that right, but how do you go about letting go, like repressed anger?
Are you asking me as me, or are you asking me as like what a therapist, how a therapist would respond?
Damn, that's a good question.
Because there's two very different answers.
I'll say this, because I'm unsure, I'll take the first one that came to mind, and you tell me which one I got. And I'll whatever makes you more comfortable. Because this is something personally I deal with, so I'm definitely asking your opinion. It could
Almost
be,
said
you know, or like
both.
Shadi, you say both if you can.
So,
Yeah,
me personally, I think it's something that I struggle with as well. Um, like, I want to say, since I can remember, probably just growing up, um, I held a lot to myself. Any problems I had, um, I just kept it to myself. Um, I would talk to friends here or there, but like deep down, like that wasn't ever the root of the problem. Um, so it's something that I'm still working on, because things that I've held on to in the past typically are like things like loss. Um, and so like that grief in and of itself, like it lasts. No one can really tell you how long grief lasts. Um, and if anybody says that they can, they're wrong.
yeah,
So um, that's something that I think I personally struggle with, and I get like triggered pretty often when it comes to certain things. Um, but in general, letting go, just recognizing like, and this is like me, but also more the therapist me now. Like recognizing the things that you have control over, because like I'm still learning that myself.
yeah,
I deal with a lot of anxiety, so a lot of it is trying to find that control. So recognizing like the things that you can and cannot control, and the things you can't control are you yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, behaviors. Um, the other things are that you can't control is everybody else, the situation, whatever it may be. So, um, and acceptance. That's, I think, the hardest thing that a lot of people, even myself, struggle with, is acceptance. Radical acceptance um, it's being okay in the situation, and then, using that time to reflect and accept. Because moving past something, that's where that holding on, like you're not
Yeah.
fully accepting it. Um, so hopefully that answered.
No, it did, and honestly, as you're talking, I am just I'm putting that on me, and acceptance. Key word that popped out, right? I've noticed that I'm 41, maybe 41, right? I'll say around the age of 36, 37 is when I finally accepted the culprit as far as my obesity was me. And I can't explain to you how hard that was. It was okay, had friends, right? I have a cousin out in the Quad Cities that was on me about my health. He'd go to the gym, try things with me. And he said one day, like, man, he's like, you're killing yourself. And I've had bad days, right? Now I've had some intrusive thoughts. I'm not gonna lie about that, but never, you know what I mean, to that degree, but to realize that, damn, he's right. You know what I mean? Like, yo, this is your fault. Nobody told you to to eat that food to that degree to where it's my point is, because I'll ramble, is that acceptance for me. I feel like although it is a step forward, I felt like it was 10 steps back,
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm like this.
Mm-hmm.
You, you know what I mean? Now you gotta eat. Your metabolism is not gonna work if you don't eat. So now I'm no that's that. And it seems like there was no moving forward with that. And again, that brings me back to this character that I am, outside or on social media, because I don't want people to feel like that. Like that's a strong feeling, Katie. Like, did I just fucking call you Katie?
That's never come out of your mouth.
That's
It's all right. It's all right. I've had a lot of names called at me in therapy.
whoa. This is my KK, y'all. I ain't never called her. Listen, I just started Caitlin. Let her move it on. But it feels like it's a step back. You know what I mean? And that, honestly, I have to mention that was so refreshing to hear from you as a therapist, not even as my niece, because now I hear you even more from the last interview that you are you. Who honestly would be that honest to say, yo, I struggle with this, but at the same time know how to tell you, listen, this is what I did, this may help. Do you know that's honestly all I've wanted, was the understanding portion of it, and not to be looked at as a you know what I mean?
I think probably something that majority, if not all my clients have said to me. Like, I have either been judged all my life, I have um never had a good experience in therapy, or they may have like in their younger years, but as an adult, it was a different experience. But um like, for me, my biggest thing is creating like a non-judgmental zone. Like, when what you say in here is what you say. Like, again, the only reason I would have to report anything is if there's harm to yourself, elders, or children. But like, this is your space. Use it how you want.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about your family, if you want to talk about some of the things that are going on with your thoughts, if you want to share how your week was, or sit here and cry for an hour, hey,
Wow.
But I've even cried with clients. Like, I've had some tough experiences with clients, but when what I tell clients in general is like, therapy is not easy. It is hard. It is hard to like reflect and talk about yourself and challenge yourself and be challenged, and in a way that like no one else will, because they
Yeah.
have no idea who you are outside of the room. Like aside from what you tell us, like we don't know. Like I have so many like made up scenarios about who my clients are outside of what I know of them. And I'm like, I can't even picture who these people are. You know, like you give me a piece of your life, and from there we just work on what's going on. If things in the past come up, they come up and we address it, and we could potentially make connections, but your session is your session.
Yeah. That's, that's a lot, man. Me even being charismatic, I can't say that it's different when it's your people, right? What you naturally care. So, that's like
Yeah.
Nene coming to me with an issue. Naturally, the ears open, naturally, the heart's open, but to have complete strangers, and you come with such a non-judgmental energy, that's a lot, man.
Well,
Because yeah,
don't get me wrong, like I do have clients who are really resistant, like especially my teenagers. But like you kind of have to, when it comes to that, you just have to like get at their level. Like, you know, I think a lot of my training as a therapist was just enhancing who I was. Um, because I've always been a listener. I've always like just genuinely cared about people, um,
I agree with that. I say,
more than myself.
yeah.
Um, but I think just my training kind of helped me focus and zone in of like, people come from so many different backgrounds, and you just never know who's going to end up in the chair across from you.
Mm,
I've had a range of people. I've worked with mandated clients, parole, probation, DCFS, DUIs, people who just want to come in and working on things. I've worked with individuals across the spectrum: anxiety, depression, schizophrenia,
oh, wow.
bipolar. Like I've this is I'm working into year 3, so
Yeah.
you know it's only I'm only gonna get more experience.
You mentioned mandated. That I automatically would assume those are your number one pushbacks,
Yep.
because when you say mandated, then that means somebody told, hey, you need to go here. So automatically you're looked at as opposition. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what is that like? Like, have you gotten them to turn to where they realize, like, yo, this person's all right, and like, what is that like? You mind elaborating on the mandated ones?
Yeah, with mandated clients, I think the first thing that you have to establish is like that safety and that trust. Um, and I do that by sharing with clients, again, like other than harm, or if, certain situations happen, I have to report it. However, everything else completely between us.
Oh,
Um, and so like establishing that. Um, and yeah, I can't tell you exactly how it happens, but it does. Like, especially when I was doing groups at my last job, I had so many clients who would come in first few sessions, like, I don't want to be here. I'm here for this reason.
yeah.
Like, it is what it is. But with the substance use groups that I was doing, like, we didn't just address substance, because most of the time with substance comes a mental health condition,
Yeah.
and we call that co-occurring. So like we addressed relationships, we addressed communication, conflict, you know, figuring out what your triggers are, how to calm yourself down if you're feeling this way or this way. Um, yeah, it's by the end of sessions, by the end of their time with me, I have some who are still like, I just did this because I had to, and hey, it is what it is. But then I've had some clients who are like, you've really helped me change my relationship with my daughter after getting out of jail, or, you know, while I was using, being able to reestablish relationships and support systems. Um, yeah, just a range of different things. And to be honest, like you and I said, like mandated clients are difficult, but that's because someone's making them do something, right? Most people, if someone's making you do something, you're not going to want to do it. um so like my biggest thing is, um if you're ready to make change, whether someone tells you or not, you'll be more open to the process. And
Mm.
that has to do a lot with reflection and acceptance of like where you're at.
That is, you preaching to the choir right now. I have to say, you mentioned the one that thanked you because you made their situation better, because that's honestly what it is. I have to go back to before we even did the first interview, speaking with Nene, and she just kind of let me know, like, Caitlin's there. It's like, and this is just her, like I say, being the sis she is, helping and throwing a little suggestion. It's funny because now I can honestly say, since me just editing
Mm-hmm.
the last interview, it really put me somewhere mentally where I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna do this. I think I'm gonna do it. What's happening, Giggles? I think I have to give that cheers to you, because you gave me the one thing that the two times I did try, and this is not even an official thing. This is something on a platform I have, and us just having a conversation. Comfortability.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I absolutely hated going into it. It's almost like I have to use the doctor thing, right? I've shared this with you outside of the live, where most of the time I don't go to the doctor because I don't care what it is. First thing they're gonna say is the weight.
Yep. Trust me, I've been there.
First
I'm
thing,
still there.
yeah.
I get it. So
It pushes me back, because it's like, I could really have something wrong, and I don't even want to, because I already know what they're gonna
right.
say. You know what I mean? And I have to use that with the therapy thing, because in my world, in some cases, I'm the one to talk to. I'm the one
Mm-hmm.
who listens.
Mm-hmm.
And other than like my best friend Shy Nikki Block, and my brothers out in the QC, and of course Nene and them, that's usually my output. But even then, I don't give you guys 100, because I know we all got issues. You know what I mean? So it kind of, I just like the fact that you gave me a comfortability to, even if it was not you that I went to, I could say right now I'm willing to give it another chance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What
I think too, like being okay with trying multiple therapists. Like that's the biggest thing, I think. A lot of people either don't have any experience, and so they either stick with their first therapist that they ever get,
Yeah,
or you've been in therapy for quite some time and you've had so many therapists. It's like, I don't want to retell my story time and time again. And what I say to that, particularly the repeating of stories, is we don't have to. You tell me
yeah,
what you want to tell me, and if the past comes up, we can address it then, but you don't have to tell me your story all over again. I might ask you like your background, but you don't have to tell me all your traumas. I don't want you to re-experience traumas that you've worked through. Um, or if you're not ready. Um, I've had clients in session, we've started addressing a topic and like, nope, I'm not there yet, and sometimes I push, sometimes I don't. It's just the type of relationship that you have with your therapist. Um, and two sides of the coin of like finding someone that you really click with as a therapist can be beneficial, but also someone who you might not, who might challenge your perspectives.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what you're comfortable with. Do you want someone to challenge you, or do you want someone that you feel more comfortable with?
I know for me personally, it's comfortability because if I don't know you, I won't see it as a challenge. You're pushing me to challenge myself. I'm going to see it as dictation
Mm-hmm.
or you're a tyrant. You know what I mean? And I can't stand that. I can take suggestions all day,
Mm-hmm.
take them, and I'll listen. I honestly listen. Maybe not in my younger days, but I'll listen. But if you try to push, and I don't know you now,
Yeah.
you could take that same table and turn it around, and you're across from that table, and it'll hit the heart.
Mm-hmm.
It'll hit the heart. A little of both comfortability first, though. Absolutely,
Well, and that's
absolutely.
core, right? Like you begin to develop that comfortability as you start to go through sessions. Like you're not gonna, I mean, you might have a first impression. You're like, I may or may not like this person. Um, but I always challenge to try a few sessions to see, where the progress is, if there's any.
Yeah.
If you're really feeling them by maybe like 3, 4 sessions, then maybe it's not the right fit. Or, reflecting of like, why is it not the right fit? A lot of how I make my clients comfortable, I think, is my tone, my language, and um, like how I present myself. Because, like you said, someone more of that like dictator role, or they might be using big words, or um, just kind of like spitting knowledge at you, or a range of things, but it also just depends on your tone and how you like present the language that, or the knowledge that you have.
Agree.
Because like I
Did
cuss,
you?
I cuss with my clients, and I one thing though with my clients, I wait until they cuss first because
Oh,
I'm meeting them where they're at. If that's the language that they use, my all I say is, as long as you don't call me out of my name, I'm okay
right.
with what you want to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Has to be respected.
Mhm.
Has
Mhm.
Yes. Have you ever been put in a position where you mentioned where you would tell a person, "Hey, try it out. Let's try 3, 4 sessions." Have you been in a position where you've maybe had to tell someone, "Hey, this is not for you"? Because I know if you're blocking it up here, it's pointless.
Mhm.
Like, have you ever been in a position where you had to tell them, like, well, hey, maybe this isn't for you, or try something else, anything along the lines of that?
Um, I think I've just had situations where I might not click with a client in group, but at the same time, I have to put that aside. And that can be difficult, and that's where like right now with the license that I have, like I am under supervision. So if I have um, issues with a client, or um, I just need advice on how to work through whatever situation it is, I talk to my supervisor, and we might work through the case or the situation, and she'll provide either a different perspective or support. Um, Actually, one client came to mind. Um, I uh, it became an uncomfortable situation, and I had to address it with my supervisor, and we recommended the client elsewhere, um, because it wasn't productive.
Because at first I thought you might have been a safety thing, but it was still more so towards the client that this is not being productive towards you.
Yeah, and we just recognized like maybe a male therapist might be better to work with you.
Oh,
Right. So you can kind of determine too, like as a therapist, uh, most of it is safety. Then, like if things aren't really getting to a point where we're connecting, maybe it's either another therapist or a different gender that might, and you can kind of pick that up on their background if they talk about it, their experience. We talk about support systems. All of these things play a factor into that that type of situation.
hmm. I can tell from knowing you the way you're choosing your words. That is so. Then that means you ran into people that actually use the woman factor. Like you mentioned male. I honestly, I don't care what gender you are. You know what I mean? To as far as getting help, just don't look at me like a piece of paper. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So that kind of irritates me that a person would even put you in that position, and here you are still sound minded. Like, hey, this might not be good for you. I have to ask, man, you mentioned that you have to separate that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any tips that you personally do to make sure you're able to separate that so it doesn't get through to the heart where it's like, yo, I'm offended. Would you think I'm not good enough type thing? Because we're human, right? So it's a thought. It may happen, but is there a certain method you do to separate that?
I think definitely talking about it with a supervisor, talking about it with maybe my coworkers and like how they're handling working with this client. Again, I mostly work primarily with groups, so like we have a team. Um, but I think one thing I tell myself too is I'm not for everybody. It's just it is what it is. And I can't be offended if someone doesn't like me or someone doesn't like my approach, or like I can't.
Yeah.
It does me no good at all. Like it serves no point. But um they might click with another counselor or therapist or whatever it may be, and you know that's fine. But I'm not gonna ever like it's different than if I'm outside of work. Like if somebody does something to me, I might hold on to it a little bit longer. But like if it's a client, hey, maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they're just not, something's going on at home and they don't really know how to respond. And yeah, it just there's many different situations that come up where you just kind of have to take a deep breath and like let it go at the door.
That's so dope because I gotta go hood with the Logic Lounge because now I'm speaking to KK, the niece. I know absolutely you don't take no shit. So to be able to train yourself, uh, where a shirt too because it's hump day or please help. Thank you, Giggles. It's amazing that you're able to separate that. I have to say personally because I know your mother. Hi, nay, not saying anything crazy, but I know there's a spark there, and to be able to separate that, I think is amazing. And it brings me to my next point about why I've been skeptical of getting help to the world, of course not the world, but to the people I'm around and to those who see me, they don't see that vulnerable person. I'm afraid of really letting a person see me
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable. You know what I mean? Whether they know me or not,
Me too.
it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. Like I could say I'm definitely comfortable with you because there's nothing. It's family there, so I don't have that feeling. As opposed to coming to somebody else, I almost feel like at one point, other than now, that I would like to. I would like, you know what I mean? Just to, yeah, I deal with this, but and of course, if you're good enough, therapists or not, if they don't know you, they're not going to see through that. You know what I mean? Now, with that, you knowing that I'm vulnerable, what would make me comfortable? If you don't know a person, I don't even know how to ask that question, but I just know the vulnerability part. Have
Yeah.
you ran into something like that as well as people don't want to show you that they're vulnerable and they really do need the help?
Yeah. I think, and it's a very, very complex answer. Um, I think what initially came to mind was, um, if you are in the position that you're starting therapy, either for the first time or for the whatever time, um, is asking your therapist about disclosure, what they're comfortable with sharing and what they're not comfortable with sharing. Some therapists will not give you any disclosure about themselves. And that can be a complete turnoff for some people. And that can be like, all right, well, like we're here and I'm only going to talk about myself. So, but with me, I disclose my one of my professors in grad school. They told me, and I think it stuck with me, is only disclose if it's going to benefit the client. Like if it's either going to build rapport, if it's going to provide background, if it's going to, because you might have someone asking you like, you're 27, what do you know about all of this? Like, I don't know what it's like to be a parent, but I have my own experience of what it's like, to be a child, to be an aunt, to just be a person,
Yeah.
so like definitely asking about disclosure is huge, and it's something that I do with my clients, not because I'm here like this is what you know if you need this information to get to know me, but to provide examples. Like in groups, we'll talk about managing anxiety, and I'll share that in the past I used to journal, or I write poems, or I color, or things like that, like to handle my anxiety. Um, just as a basis, like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
human, right? Like, I'm not this stoic person that's just here to listen.
Yeah.
We're experiencing this together. So that's one of the first responses that I had. The second one was, um, when I do have clients who have difficulty being vulnerable, um, I talk about one of my tricks, I guess, or skills or techniques, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
um, is asking them to share with me 3 major life events, whether positive, negative, neutral, but sharing those events and how they've shaped who you are today. And that kind of allows people to like pick and choose what they want to share. Um, I've had clients who, at first, when they were sharing, might just provide general information, but like as they start to talk about the event or the story, um, they'll catch themselves and they'll be like, well, I might as well just tell you like the whole story. And so it's like, all right, like let's do that. And that there's a little entryway into that vulnerability. Like I said, whether good, bad, neutral, um, it kind of gives you a different perspective where it's not like, all right, let's be vulnerable, but hey, let me learn about you. Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah. You show you care, and I got a second. You mentioned it earlier, and even Giggles just mentioned it. The way you talk is so there's a care behind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I can't express enough how don't judge me, man. You know what I mean? Don't judge me when you're in that type of position. And there's no fault to these two that have tried, but I can honestly tell that it was another day on the job. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, Mr. Willie, tell me this, tell me that. You know what I mean? Like, for real, I do. Like, she doesn't realize how much she's making it to where I'm going to take that step because the bad days are outweighing the good, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mentally. But
Trust
I'm
me.
grateful.
I,
No, go ahead.
I feel that. I just had my therapy intake last week. Like, it's not easy.
It's hard as hell. It is so hard. It's the hardest thing that I've honestly, and I've dealt with some things, right? I've seen things, been through some things, got through them, but I never realized how hard it is to look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
See myself every day, wash my face, brush my teeth. But to look and say, hey, you might need to do this, you might need to do that. I will help somebody else just to get the thought off me. And I know now that needs to change. That needs to change because what happens if I drown? I've been strong enough not to go to a super bad place, but how long is that going to last if you're not seeking the actual help? And like right now, like as I'm talking to you, your nods are so understanding. Like we could laugh about it all day, but I am like dead as serious, and it's amazing
And like I
to me.
said,
Yeah, go ahead.
it is difficult because you have to really sit there and like deal with your shit. And like some days are going to be better than others, and some days you're going to, have tears and, have breakthroughs. But like the way I look at it it has to be hard. So that way
Mm,
you progress. Because if it's easy, then you're either avoiding or you're not really addressing the problem. So like it's gonna be difficult. Anyone that's been in therapy can tell you that like they've cried.
yeah, yeah. Now, I can't say that, I've definitely used my people for this, but in most situations, I do it alone.
Hmm.
And to some people, I act like I don't do it at all. And that's just not true. It's not true. It's not realistic. It is absolutely hard, man. I'm starting to see it can be life changing because there are things that I want to accomplish. There are things that I want to do, And having that outlet, I believe, would help me a lot, because that's a large load to deal with.
Mhm.
Now, question, and of course, if it's too harsh, please let me know. Logic Lounge is bar none. You tell me fuck off if you need to tell me to fuck off. The days I don't have to ask, are there days that you have to walk away from the whole thing entirely? How do you bring yourself back from it? See, I try to be careful with my questions, because that's a no-brainer with what you deal with. That's a lot. So how do you bring yourself back to Caitlin, the therapist, when you got to step away sometimes?
I joke about it sometimes that like I'm gonna quit my job and just like work in fast food because it won't be as mentally draining. But then I think about it, I'm like, but like I don't like I wouldn't get much out of it. So like even though there are bad days, I and like there's probably more like I wouldn't say bad days, but either like stressful days. I think I come back to like again, if I can make one person, if I can make a difference in one person's life, um, and and I'm still like fresh into like the field, so like I still have that passion and drive, and like regardless of like the organizational stuff, where maybe something's happening within my job itself, not the client wise. I remind myself like I'm not doing this to be part of something. I'm doing this to help someone. Like for me, it's for my clients. Like everything I do is for my clients. Um, and sometimes I might care more than them, but hey, like it's just who I am, and stepping back, I have a hard time taking days off because then I feel bad for having to reschedule or cancel on my clients. But there are days where I wake up and I'm like, I can't do it today. I'm drained. And that's where me being human comes in. Like I have to do that sometimes.
You do know you got a huge S on your chest right now. That is a lot. I have to say, man, I've been to doctors, therapists, all type of people, because I have these conditions, so I've seen my share. The way you relate is absolutely phenomenal. It's phenomenal, and it's exactly, it was understandable for you to be honest about that. There are people that would act like, because like I said, I've done it where I've acted like, oh, I'm good. I'm not good all the time.
Yeah.
But I put this mask on and I act as if everything is fine when it's not. And the fact that you can recognize, hey, today's not the day, but still feel bad that you even did self-care is so selfless. It's so selfless, and it's like I have to salute you, because I think there's nothing but greatness gonna happen for you. And last time we talked, you mentioned about, I asked what your end goal is, and you told me, I don't know, and you gave me these levels and goo gobs of ideas. One poked out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said you would be willing to like go to schools and speak
Mm-hmm.
to people. With that, do you have a little elaboration of that? Like, would you be the type to bring them into therapy, or what type of talk would you be doing at these schools? Because you have a lot of ads, so you have a lot of choices. Did you separate that as to what you would talk about to spread to the people?
Honestly, I think it just depends on like what the need is because if they want to talk about substance use, hey, I have plenty of knowledge on that.
Yeah.
Um, and if I don't, I can always seek resources. If it's general mental health, if it's um, like particularly with kids, what I've seen is a lot of anxiety or conflict, self-esteem issues. So like talking about those topics. But yeah, honestly, I don't mind like really anything. I just like being a um, person that can provide knowledge or support or just an ear to listen to.
Man. I have to ask this. Do you know this is something that I didn't even know? Now I know you were into sports, right? I knew that. Was there ever anything else before there? Because I asked you what got you into it. You let me know that you know, I want to help people and hey, I can get paid for it. Was there anything else before therapy hit that you thought, yeah, I may do this?
Mm, well, like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet. And then I found out you had to euthanize animals, and I was like, not for me.
Yeah,
Like I can't. I care too much about anything and
yeah,
everybody. Like I can't, especially animals. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
So then that was like, well, nope. And then I think I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna do marine biology. And then I realized that you have to leave the state to go to schools that are like near the marine
yeah,
life.
yeah,
And I was like, I can't leave my family.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm a very family person. So, um, but then I think a lot of it was just like people telling me that like I'm a good friend or I'm a really good listener. And I was like, I can help people. Um, so like I said, I was interested in music therapy while I was in high school, um, because I played an instrument and I was in band. Um, and then with me being in sports and having an injury, I was like, well, this is a setback.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of changed my trajectory post high school. So, um, that was really major. And I was like, there's a lot of athletes who get injuries and like that's it. Like they don't know what else to do. So that was a huge interest. So that um, was like my major interest going into grad school. And then we started taking like some of our courses with addictions, and I was like, oh, this is really relevant and very interesting. I'm going to also do this. So, you know, I was I had a dual track. So I was doing counseling and addictions and sport and human performance.
This is all before 27, though. So
Yes.
these are back in the day stories.
Yes.
That's huge. That's
Like I
absolutely huge.
was gonna go to school. Like I was good at school. Um, like I always did well. So like there for me in my brain there was no other option.
Mm. I, it's like I don't know you in the greatest way possible. And I listen, I need you to know I want to have multiple versions of these when your time permits. Um, you are definitely someone I want to continue to lean on with my mental health awareness talks. Uh, for one, your energy is awesome and your understanding is double awesome, which leads me now to my final question. Um, do you, being as though you have hats in therapy and counseling, right? Is their favorite shade? Is it the drug counsel? Is it the anxiety? Do you have a favorite shade of therapy that you feel may be your niche? Yeah, you were ready for that one, KK.
That's hard. Hard because so in the small amount of time that I've had in this field, I think I've had some really interesting experiences. Um, and I always find myself coming back to substance use, and addiction. So I feel like that's my niche, but because it's so complex. Um,
Challenger. Okay.
I there's so much that comes with it, like rebuilding your support, rebuilding like your co-occurring mental health, like what does that look like? Um, Noticing progress and growth, addressing challenges, relapses, slips, um, making people feel like they're not part of the stigma, in general when it comes to mental health, but primarily with addictions because generationally there's a lot of stigma, um, regarding people who use, whether they have an addiction or have just recreational use. There's a stigma. And then also the type of drug that you use, alcohol or other. Um, so all of these, it's very complex. And I
Yeah.
find myself coming back to it, and um, I started in it, then I switched to primarily mental health, and I missed the group aspect. Like that was my major thing. Like I really enjoy groups. And what's interesting is that when I took my group class um, in grad school, I was like, I can't do it. I don't want to. Like I don't like groups.
Yeah.
But here I am, and I'm like, I've had 3 people observe me in the last 2 months. And they're like, I don't know how you do it. Like you're so good. And I'm like, I don't know either. Like,
Yeah, that you multiple people at one time, that's I'm
it's
gonna instantly stray away. Right.
yeah, because when I was in grad school, I was like, this is too much for me to focus on. Like I can't address everybody at once, but when you start building it, um, I don't know, a good group that just there's some good groups and they make you really enjoy it.
Again, man, honestly, I thought I knew you had a lot of information, but your brain cannot be picked in just 2 episodes.
One thing I will also say that I just realized that I enjoy groups because majority of the people in these groups realize that they're not alone. That's the biggest thing that they leave saying. Like, I recognize, like, I thought I was the only one. And you don't get that necessarily from individual counseling. I think that's what I like the most about
Because it does spread in a way. You'd
it.
be surprised how if one person says it, it might be three that was feeling it as well,
Yeah,
and now they're
like
comfortable with
my
it.
group this week, someone brought up medication, and he was so worried about being on medication, and everyone in the group shared their experience with medication. So that just changed the whole perspective for him.
And it helped.
Hmm.
KK, thank you would be an understatement of giving me your time again. I truly appreciate it, man. Before we get up out of here, is there any final thoughts you'd like to share? You know, that's kind of my thing, the final thought.
Um, if anyone needs resources, you can reach out to me. You can DM me. I can send you either resources on finding therapists. I can send you resources to help manage some of emotions, feelings, thoughts. But definitely reach out if you need it and take a step back. Are you ready to change? Do you want to make a change? And why is change important?
I didn't have a mic to drop.
Let me,
Lou Marvel even felt. As y'all can see, she is, listen, you got comfortable KK today.
I did.
So now the danger begins.
And today, I cooked right before this, so I think that took my mind off of it. But, yeah, I mean, it's been a week, so I kind of had to separate that, but definitely not as nervous as I was before.
Well, know that I want you at the lounge multiple times because this is something I plan on continuing. If I can help in any way by using a platform to let people know they're not alone with that, that'll be great for me, man. So again, I thank you, man, and I definitely want to give a shout out to my sis Nene and my brother Diddy, man, who's healing right now. Give him your thoughts and prayers, people. He's a fighter, but my brother is healing, and my niece took time out of that to come and speak with me. I love her to death for that, man. So I'm going to get out your hair and have you enjoy your dinner. And if I don't have a plate, there will be a problem, but don't worry about that. Now, no pressure, no pressure. That goes for you too, Lou. I know you're in the back. But we're going to get out your hair. And I'm going to end it. Like I say, thank you for tuning in to Logic Lounge with Fleazy Jones, episode 41, brought to you by Block Legend 7. And I'm going to end it how I always end it. I say living off good instinct counts. So always keep your logic. Doses. We out.